Afternoon of the 4th day. The tragedy of 0.14.
Part 4.
Ichan, you're back!
Kunigisa sat on her bed, her body wrapped in a pure white bathrobe. Hikari was on the sofa. Seeing that I had returned, she breathed a sigh of relief. Trying to handle a conversation with a bath-fresh, spunky Kunigisa was no task for an amateur, so I knew how Hikari felt.
Ichan, look! I washed my hair! Compliment me! Compliment me!
It's cute. Her hair had turned a pretty cobalt blue, the original Kunigisa color.
It's not easy bearing recessive genes,
She told me once.
Are you gonna take a bath too, Ichan? You might come up with a good idea in there, like Archimedes. And then run around the mansion naked, just like him. That would be a problem,
Hikari said, in all seriousness. It was like she thought I really might. Gee, what had I done to impart such an oddball impression?
But Archimedes really was a strange person, wasn't he?
The maid added thoughtfully, tilting her head.
Are all geniuses like that?
Was she picturing someone else at the mansion? It felt like it could have been anyone, or no one. Nudity wasn't so uncommon in those days, Hikari, I explained to her. I don't think he was being a weirdo.
Yep, you're terribly learned, Ichan.
Terribly is about right. So, Hikari, what was it you needed?
Oh, yes. My mistress sent me to see what's up with Tomo and you.
She sure was an honest person. I told her there was no point if she went and told us that's what she was doing. She laughed embarrassedly.
I know. Akari's really better at this kind of thing, but she'll be staying on the mainland tonight. She won't be back until tomorrow morning.
She went to call on that detective, right? I was a little bit interested, so I went ahead and asked. So, what's this person like anyway? Judging from the way you spoke, it sounds like you've met before. Are you well acquainted?
Yes, I suppose so. Aikawa came to our rescue in the past. There was an incident, and, well...
Hikari vaguely trailed off. It didn't seem like a secret, just a matter she wasn't eager to discuss. An incident, huh? On this island?
Yes, this was right after my mistress had been disowned, and before it had become this sort of salon. So we called Aikawa here, and, well, the case was solved almost immediately.
Hikari divulged with some feeling.
Aikawa has kind of a violent temper, you see. An emotional sarcast. Angry at the world. Solving cases through sheer rage.
Huh. Hikari seemed to be carefully choosing her words as she spoke, but not very effectively. I couldn't put together a concrete picture of this guy at all. So, Aikawa has a short fuse?
Well, it's more like a perpetual state of rage. Even if you catch a glimpse of a smile, there's always this sort of hostility hanging in the air. And, I'm sorry, it's kind of hard to describe. Anyway, it's like Aikawa has a grudge against the whole world.
I see, I said, even though I didn't. But all the detectives I have ever read about in mystery novels are all so cool and reserved. They're always saying stuff like, "Didn't you realize that?" You could replace 80% of their dialogue with, "What are you, stupid?" And it would still make sense. But based on what you're saying, Aikawa sounds like some sort of hot-headed defender of justice with zero tolerance for criminals.
Oh, Well, it's not like that. It's not just zero tolerance for criminals, it's zero tolerance for the entire world. You know, always saying things like, this world and humanity could be so much better. Why are you bastards all slacking?
He really was hot-headed. A rare type of person these days, and such a splendid contrast to me, a nonsense user of the vaguest persuasion.
But despite all the anger and grouchiness, it just doesn't do any good to get frustrated by people who are lazy even about their own worth. So just wear a sardonic smile. Ayakawa was like that, quite unlike you and Tomo, to say the least.
Hikari sounded sort of gleeful in describing this detective, like she was boasting about a close friend or something, or more like a hero. It was just like when Iria had described him. Is that right? Well, that's probably the better way to be, I said, to keep the conversation going. Do you think Aikawa is reliable?
Yes, for sure.
That's a relief. Even if we can't figure out the mystery in the next 6 days, we have a backup savior.
You sound awfully unsure of yourself.
I'm cautious. Or maybe I'm a coward. Or rather, I don't really care.
You don't care?
She gave me a confused look.
You know, this may be strange coming from me, but why is everyone able to stay so calm in a situation like this?
Well, that's a fairly deep question.
Sorry, but you know, it's like, even though someone was killed, everyone is so...
Maybe they're just used to it. At least, that was pretty much how it was for me. I don't really know the difference between used to and numb, though.
Yup, but Shinya and Yayoi seem to be reacting in a more or less appropriate way.
Kunigisa said. That's right. But hey, Hikari, you and your sister seem pretty calm too. What about that?
Well, we've been trained to maintain composure.
She sounded a little sad about it. Her 27 years of living probably hadn't been much of a cakewalk.
Oh, right.
She said, breaking the awkward pause with a snap of her fingers.
My mistress told me to make sure I ask you this. About the locked room trick? Earlier you said something about understanding so much that you don't understand, right? My mistress believes that Tomo must have figured it out.
About that space enclosed by a river of paint. That young heiress may not have been worldly, but she was quite sharp. Nothing to brag about, really, I said. Any mystery novel fan would be able to solve it easily. But you know, when you encounter such a trick in real life, it proves to be pretty perplexing. I guess the answers get a little drowned out by the smell of blood. The taste of death.
Ichan, you sound like an idiot using such weird turns of phrase.
Kunigisa was laughing. An innocent, vulnerable, childlike laugh. It made my head spin just a little. Did I want to be chosen? By her? My sudden silence drew the quizzical gaze of Hikari, but a moment later, she turned to Kunigisa.
Tomo? If you do know, I hope that you'll tell me. Sure, why not? It took a while to pin it down, but I finally figured it out.
Kunigisa nodded, gamely.
Where should I start? Well, first, if you wouldn't mind, could you tell me what you meant earlier? About knowing so much you don't know?
It's like the difference between bottom up and top down. I cut in, lacking faith in Kunigisa's ability to explain it. Like, say, for example, if that table is a sandbox, and you want to make a mound of sand as high as possible. What would you do?
Start from the sides and push all the sand together into a mountain.
Right. So would I. But Kunigisa wouldn't do that. She would take a whole bunch of sand and just dump it on the table. The resulting mountain of sand would be just like the one you and I built. You and I would gradually build up to the final product. Kunigisa would remove things to get to the final product. That's how her mind processes things. Right, Tomo?
I don't really get your analogy, Ichan.
Way to strand me. At any rate, Hikari seemed to get me, and she nodded along.
Okay, so if you figured it out, Tomo, could you explain the trick to me?
She requested.
Yuppie, if you'll answer my question.
Hikari stared back blankly, clueless as to what that meant. But Kunigisa, paying no mind, turned towards her machines. She pointed to the screen of the computer I'd booted up.
Okay, first let's review the scene of the crime. Ta-da! The atelier.
She used an image viewer program to display a full picture. That marbled river Styx, and the decapitated corpse on the far shore. The images vividly revived our memories of the morning, but oblivious to all that, Kunigisa began her explanation.
The obstacle is all this paint. The earthquake happened at 1 a.m., causing the shelf to fall over, which resulted in what you now see. That much is clear. The river is too wide to jump. If we suppose the murder happened after the earthquake, the killer's means of entry is a mystery. Or at least the means of exit is. You with me so far? Yes, so far. It would be easy to pin the crime on Tanaga Ashinaga, but the answer isn't that simple.
Hikari gave us an ambiguous smile. Maybe she didn't know the legend of the long-legged giant. Or maybe she did. It didn't matter.
So you're forced to think that the murder happened before the earthquake. If that were the case, it would have been easy for the murderer to get in and out. No footprints, no lock on the atelier door. In which case, it seems like Akane must be the killer, since she was the only one who didn't have an alibi. But that's where Shinya's testimony comes in. He confirmed that he heard Kanami's voice when he called her after the earthquake. In other words, she must have been alive at least for a few minutes afterwards. So, Hikari, what to do? Well,
Hikari tilted her head to the side. It was pretty adorable.
I guess the window? It's the only other way. But the window is locked, so... The window, huh? There is that possibility. Glass is more liquid than solid, conceptually speaking, so I see how you might think that a lock means nothing. Or we might even speak of a tunnel effect.
That was just misleading.
You must have figured it out by this point, right, Hikari?
Teased Kunigisa.
Not even a little.
It's the post hoc fallacy, Hikari, I said, coming to her rescue. I'd been holding out because she looked so cute confused, but I was beginning to feel bad for her. Kunigisa nodded.
Yep. Post hoc ergo propter hoc translates to erroneous cause and effect. Mistaken syllogism. The assumption, it's about assumptions. The world isn't so neatly ordered. I don't understand Latin. Hey, but you knew it was Latin. Thanks to the ergo.
Cogito ergo sum, huh? Hikari was sharper than she seemed.
For example,
Kunigisa continued.
Imagine I've got 100 yen coin, and I say it's going to come up heads. I said it, okay? And then I toss the coin. Okay, it's heads. What do you think? You think it was a coincidence, right? That's normal. But some people get it wrong. They figure I said I would throw a heads, and it was heads. Therefore, I must have some kind of special power to control the coin.
For the record, it was a trick coin.
I drank some alcohol, and my cold went away. Therefore, alcohol cures colds. I turned on my computer, and a visitor showed up. Therefore, computers summon visitors. A man looked at a woman, and she happened to be looking in his direction. Therefore, she must like him. A catfish was wiggling, and then an earthquake happened, so the earthquake must have been the catfish's fault. None of that makes much sense, right, Hikari? In other words, just because B happens after A doesn't mean A and B have a cause-effect relationship. Things happen chronologically, sequentially, but that's no reflection of causality. So let's think about this case now. There was an earthquake, then a river of paint formed. Therefore, is that a causal relationship? Oh.
Oh, that. It finally dawned on her.
So, that river wasn't caused by the earthquake. Well, the shelf itself probably really did fall over because of it, and it probably did cause a little bit of paint to spill out. Kanami even said so on the phone. But I doubt it would have caused such an incredible amount of paint to spill. The paint cans probably rolled around and let a few drops out. If you think about it, those paint can lids are relatively strong, so it's not likely that just falling over would have caused them to spill all over the place like that. But even if it was just a little bit, Kanami was confined to a wheelchair, so for her, it was impossible to leave the atelier. Oh, I see where this is going,
Hikari said.
That makes sense. So then the killer snuck into her room and murdered her. Then on the way out, purposely poured paint around the room, little by little. If you did it slowly, little by little, you could make a river like that without leaving any footprints.
Hikari said, with a vacant look, as if she were imagining the killer walking backwards with a can of paint. Yup. We had all assumed that the earthquake had caused the river of paint. But in reality, it didn't take a natural disaster, or a natural artist to spill the paint, or to draw the river. It could have been the work of an amateur. No artistic talent required. It wouldn't have taken 10 minutes.
But why would the killer do that?
Asked Hikari. Probably to make us think the murder happened before the quake, I said. They must not have known Kanami talked to Shinya on the phone, so they figured by making the river, we'd be led to conjecture that the crime occurred before the quake.
So this means...
Yes. It means, I said, clapping my hands together, and then spreading them out wide. The suspect list just got way longer. There were only 4 people with post-quake alibis. Iria and Rei, and then Maki and Shinya. The remaining people were no longer cleared of suspicion.
So then, there's no point in keeping Akane locked up, right?
Hikari said cheerfully.
I mean, right? She's not the only one under suspicion anymore.
She must have been feeling pretty guilty about how we treated Akane. It seemed Hikari wasn't much of a mathematical thinker. It was quite a contrast from the rational Akane Soniyama herself. I decided to tell Hikari. Akane already knew about the paint trick too. She's just pretending she doesn't know.
Why?
Hikari said, honestly baffled.
Isn't that strange? Why would she do something like that?
To maintain the equilibrium. That brain of hers sure keeps busy. To create the best possible circumstances, she was disregarding her own foul circumstances. It was almost an inhuman way of thinking, but extremely admirable nonetheless.
So, we should keep this a secret then, huh?
Yeah. The killer is still at large, so I don't think it would be good to upset the situation any. I suppose Iria has a right to know, though. As far as that goes, I think you should do as you see fit. I wasn't going to be that much of a roadblock. Hikari let out a moan.
But it's so... I mean, the river not really being caused by the earthquake is so simple. Like I should have seen it a long time ago.
Yeah, I couldn't believe it either. But you know, any trick seems simple once you figured it out. I've seen tons of tricks that were even stupider. In comparison, this one was decent. I somehow found myself rushing to the culprit's defense in face of Hikari's intense disappointment. Saying that afterwards isn't fair.
But who comes up with such a trick right after an earthquake?
Asked Hikari, still dissatisfied.
I mean, what were the odds there was even going to be an earthquake? It's all too much of a coincidence. Well, it's the law of great numbers, Hikari. What is that?
The maid seemed suspicious of the term when Kunigisa brought it up.
The law of great numbers? It means that something looks like an amazing coincidence, but when you sit down and think about it, it's not really so amazing after all. Like, for example, if you saw someone win the lottery, wouldn't you find it amazing? You're less likely to hit the jackpot than to be struck by a meteor. But if you think about it, that's only true if the guy only bought one lottery ticket. Practically nobody who plays the lottery only buys one ticket, one time. If you have a group of 23 people, there's a 50% chance 2 of them will have the same birthday. Even so, it seems incredible, right? That's the law of great numbers. The earthquake just happened to come today, but it wouldn't have changed anything if it had happened tomorrow instead. Plus, it's not likely that the killer was counting on this earthquake trick alone. Mr. Culprit probably considered a whole variety of ideas. There you go. So, you mean like multiple means to one end? Yup, you got it. And it all relates back to that mistaken causality,
Kunigisa said, poking Hikari with her index finger.
Now, it's time for my question. Ah, of course. We made a deal.
Hikari tightened her posture and nodded.
Go ahead. Ask me anything. Why is Iria here?
It was a question that made the air bristle. Here, this island. Wet Crow's Feather Island. Why was Iria here? In a single instant, Hikari's usual cheerful demeanor went completely stiff. She had frozen, clearly panicking. It wasn't confusion, but utter fear. Pure and simple. Was it really that bad?
Well...
Her voice trembled, unable to put the words together.
Well, that's... You can't answer. Just that one question. Please don't make me, Tomo.
Hikari leaned forward and hung her head, looking genuinely contrite. She would have fallen over if she bowed any lower.
I'll answer anything else, just not this.
She looked truly pitiable. It was like we were the devil trying to get her to do something wicked. Hand me your soul instead. That which you hold dearest belongs to me now. Such awful nonsense. No, it's okay. We don't mind, I said, breaking into the give and take. Right, Tomo?
Yep. No use trying to force it out of ya.
For all her selfishness, Kunigisa was being uncharacteristically sensitive. Sorry, Hikari.
No, I'm the one who's sorry. After asking you to my heart's content.
Hikari stood up.
Please excuse me.
She started to leave, but then paused and looked back.
Oh, one more thing.
She sounded like Detective Columbo or something, except it wasn't in the least bit unpleasant when a cute maid did it. It even brought a smile to my face.
This has nothing to do with my mistress. I'm asking you personally. Do you really believe Maki Himina has special powers?
Did we believe? Maki's ESP? The ability to know all. After thinking for a moment, I answered, "Right now, there's no particular reason not to, as long as we put aside common sense."
I don't really care if she has him or not.
Kunigisa chimed in.
Yes, you're probably right.
Hikari gave a convinced nod, then left the room. My eyes stayed on the door for a while, as I thought about her bizarre reaction to our question about Iria. Well, whatever. It probably didn't have anything to do with the current case. It seemed highly unlikely that Iria's exile here had any influence on Kanami's death. I looked away from the door and towards Kunigisa. The workstation emitted a strange noise just then. I looked over at it to see Kunigisa had once again started doing something on it. "What's up?"
Mail. I got some mail. From Chi. He's a fast one. People used to always say he ignores the theory of relativity like it was a traffic light.
She had asked him to run a check this afternoon, so he sure wasn't slow, not to mention the fact that he was incarcerated.
Huh. Himena's real name is Shinari Himena. Wow. That's a much better name. I wonder why she uses a fake one.
Her real name? Hey, this guy even tracked down trivial stuff like that?
Yep. He was supposed to see how everyone was connected, but man, he sure has a lousy personality. Someone ought to educate him. Seriously, he doesn't understand how to deal with people at all. Oh, wait. Here it is. Hey, Ichan, we've got a connection.
I went over to her, but everything on the screen was in English, so I didn't understand it.
Why don't you understand English, Ichan? Where was it that you studied abroad? The South Pole? Mars?
I forgot it. That's all. If you don't use something, it only stays with you for 3 or 4 months, you know. Besides, my reading and writing were always worse than my conversation.
Didn't the ER program entrance exam require English, Russian, and Chinese? How'd you get in? Back door?
It's like I'm telling you. I used to know it.
Sounds like a lie to me. Anyway, I'll translate. It says, Kanami Ibuki and Akane Sonayama were spotted having lunch in a Chicago cafe about half a year ago. It's an eyewitness account. Lunch. I wonder why. Don't those two hate each other?
They had lunch together? As suspected, they had a connection. But why those two? Akane had lived in the States, and Kanami was a world-renowned artist, so it wasn't that implausible that they could have met over there. But they sure weren't the sort of pair to be having lunch dates together.
Yep. And it wasn't just a lunch date either. It was at a super secret club.
Secret club? Speaking of sounding like a lie.
Yep.
Kunigisa nodded.
But those places really do exist. Even in Japan there are some, though not many. All sorts of politicians and celebrities and their families go there. Maybe high-class clubs would be a more accurate description. The security at those places is out of this world.
Which raised the question of how this guy got the information. But I sure wasn't about to ask. Sometimes, it's better not to touch the other end of the tunnel. Is that definite?
Chi doesn't lie, even if he sometimes withholds the truth. I guess that makes him like you.
I lie plenty. But putting that aside, so Akane Sonayama and Kanami Ibuki had a connection. Whether or not it was important information, it was certainly something to be concerned about. I decided it was probably best to confirm it with Akane tomorrow. It never occurred to me that this would turn out to be impossible.
There's some other stuff here about how everyone's doing recently. Na-chan's doing about the same. Sao-chan seems to be having some rough times. He-chan has gone missing. That is so him. The Admiral found a job. Nice job. Ah-chan, whoops! Everyone else is doing well. Chi too. That's a relief. Have to admit, I was feeling a little guilty.
Feeling a little left out as she immersed herself in memories of the good old days, I rolled over on the sofa. "Let's get to sleep already," I mumbled. Since Akane was in the storeroom now, I was stuck sleeping here. Kunigisa finished checking her mail, switched off the workstation, and dove off the revolving chair into the bed.
Ha!
Then she rose to her knees.
Ii-chan, let's sleep together tonight for sure.
Pass.
It's still cold at night. If you sleep over there, you'll catch a cold. This bed is a king size. Lots of room.
Pass.
Come on, I won't do anything. We'd just be sleeping together, that's all. I won't even touch you. You can even sleep with your back to me. Come on, that's not so bad, right?
Pass.
Please, I'm lonely over here.
Damn bastard. She was really digging in this time. I got up from the couch and looked her right in the eye. "You swear you won't do anything?"
Yes.
"You swore. I'm gonna believe you."
No sweat.
She nodded with a happy look.
I won't let you down.
And so, that night I slept on a bed for the first time in a long time. A very long time. Not that I was expecting anything, but she really did keep her promise, and I could hear her sleep breathing behind me. But since I had my back to her, I didn't know if she was really sleeping. Then I remembered. The old days. About back then. 5 years.
Ii-chan.
She always called me that, with that same sense of familiarity. Her heart was just as open to me now, like we had never been apart. Wide open. No facades. 5 years. I really don't like meeting up with people from the past. Whether they've changed or not, it's a lonely experience for me. Nevertheless, Kunigisa's house was the first place I went when I came back to Japan, before even going to my own home, and I did so without hesitation. The blue-haired girl. She still looked exactly the same, like those years had never happened. I closed my eyes. Surely this was the first time we'd slept side by side in a long while.
I recommend you just take her,
Akane said. If you want to be her one and only. If you want not to be liked, but chosen. Nonsense. What if I had told Akane I had already tried that before? Would she hold it against me? It hadn't been out of love, but out of a desire for destruction. But Akane, it didn't accomplish a thing. Really, it accomplished nothing. So then what? Then what should I do? Please, tell me.